Tijuana. Mexico just sealed 6 buildings and ended 50% of American surgery. Stay with me, because how a nation weaponizes bureaucracy is the story that requires telling. This is not a military action. The weapon here is not an explosive, but a team of auditors with clipboards. To understand the collapse, you have to understand what happens inside these buildings. This is an ethylene oxide, or ETO, sterilization chamber. It is the only way to sterilize millions of heat-sensitive devices, the plastics and complex electronics of modern medicine. Half of all devices used in U.S. operating rooms pass through chambers just like this. A supply chain designed for maximum economic efficiency, not for geopolitical resilience. The system moved this critical step outside the U.S. to avoid stringent environmental regulations. It operated on a core, unspoken assumption: perpetual stability. Let's talk about the trigger. A lethal, unauthorized U.S. anti-cartel raid on Mexican soil. It provides the casus belli, the justification for what comes next. The response is not military. It is not diplomatic in the traditional sense. The response is proportional. The response is asymmetric. The response is administrative. Within days, Mexico's legislature passes the National Sovereignty and Security Act. It grants the government broad powers to halt any foreign-owned infrastructure deemed a security risk. The 6 largest U.S.-owned ETO facilities are its first target. Simultaneously, the Guardia Nacional secures the perimeters. Regulators enter, citing the new law. The reason given? An indefinite safety and sovereignty audit. An act of aggression is transformed into a bureaucratic quagmire. The physical system locks down. The artery is severed. Let's talk about the cascade. Day 0. The flow of hundreds of thousands of items goes to 0. For the first 7 days, the crisis is invisible to the public. It exists only on the inventory dashboards of hospital supply managers. Distributors like McKesson and Cardinal Health report a total drop in inbound receipts. They begin allocating remaining inventory, a process of controlled starvation. Day 14. The shockwave hits the hospitals. Central supply managers see stockout dates fall below the 10-day mark. This is not a hurricane. This is not a natural disaster. This is a targeted administrative action hundreds of miles away. The first cancellations are for non-emergency elective surgeries. These are the primary revenue drivers for American hospitals. The system fails not from a lack of doctors, but from a lack of basic sterile tools. The absence of a single 10-cent component renders a $1 million suite useless. Let's talk about depletion. U.S. hospitals operate on a just-in-time basis. Most maintain only a 14 to 30-day supply of disposables. This provides no buffer against a full systemic shutdown. Day 21. The national elective surgery cancellation rate hits 40%. A hospital in Ohio runs out of sterile catheters. A clinic in Texas is told to reuse single-use surgical trays. This is the specific human reality that numbers contain, but do not convey. The U.S. has domestic ETO capacity, but it is limited. There is no slack in the system. There is no redundancy. New plants cannot be conjured overnight due to the same environmental rules that drove production out. Day 30. A national healthcare crisis is declared. Critical surgeries are now triaged based on available sterile supplies. The government turns to its last resort, the Strategic National Stockpile. They find PPE, they find ventilators, they find raw materials. They do not find the thousands of specific sterile kits needed by every hospital in the country. The stockpile was designed for pandemics, not precision logistical failures. The U.S. response is paralyzed. A military response is impossible against a, quote, regulatory action on Allied soil. Diplomatic talks are stalled in a maze of legal and administrative jargon. The president is forced to address the nation about a crisis with no immediate solution. Let's talk about the sanctuary. The entire system rested on a single, catastrophic assumption. The assumption that critical infrastructure on friendly soil was safe. The assumption that a neighbor would never weaponize a shared dependency. The assumption was not just wrong, it was naive. For decades, U.S. strategic thinking defined risk by geography. It never accounted for the industrial park next door. This crisis proves that proximity is not protection. The system was optimized for economic efficiency, not resilience. The load-bearing structure of American healthcare was not its doctors, not its technology. It was the uninterrupted political goodwill of its immediate neighbors. From this morning forward, the definition of national security has changed. It means that resilience is not a cost to be minimized, but a capability to be built. It means that every single source dependency is a loaded gun held by a foreign power. It means that the sanctuary was always an illusion. Thresholds once crossed cannot be uncrossed. The logic of administrative warfare is now a permanent part of the strategic landscape. The true vulnerability was not in the system's hardware. It was in the assumptions that held it all together. And it reveals the most terrifying vulnerability of all. The one place you are supposed to be safe. The operating room. It is no longer a sanctuary. The buildings are still sealed,